Welcome back everyone to another DSCC lab walkthrough. Today we'll be going over lab 8, how to set up for a Smartcard logon. Our main task is to configure the domain for Smartcard logon. Alright, let's jump into task 1, or our only task. Step 1, create a new certificate template on the issuing CA. Let's go ahead and log into our sub CA. And I already have my certification authority opened up. If you don't, go ahead and open that and then navigate to certificate templates, right click on it and select manage so that we can issue out a new template. And for this, we are going to look for the domain controller authentication template, and then we are going to right click on it and duplicate it. First thing we're going to change is our compatibility settings. (2016) for both. Then we'll click on the general tab and change the name to XXMU domain controller authentication. Alright, now let's go ahead and click on the extensions tab up on the top, and we are going to highlight application policies and ensure that the application policies contain Smartcard logon, server authentication, and client authentication. So once you verify that, cancel out. Now let's click on the security tab, highlight domain controllers, and ensure that auto-enroll is allowed. Once you verify that, go ahead and click on apply. Then click on OK. Close out your console and issue your template. Okay, let's highlight that, click on OK, and now we've issued out our template. Now let's move on to the next step, which is to create a GPO to auto-enroll certificates. So let's minimize this and let's log into our domain controller now. Okay, once in your domain controller, open up your group policy management console. And we're going to create a domain and link it at the root of our forest. Or excuse me, not at the root of our forest, in our domain controller's OU. So right click on your domain controller's OU and create a GPO and link it here. We're going to name this GPO XXMU domain controller certificate auto-enroll. All right, click on OK. Then let's go ahead and edit our GPO. And we're going to navigate to computer configuration, policies, Windows settings, security settings, and then public key policies. And in this node, we are going to look for the configure services client certificate enrollment policy. So once you've located that, open up the settings. We're going to set this to enabled. And then we are going to leave this default policy in there. We're not going to change it like we did in the earlier labs. So once you've confirmed that, click on apply, then click on OK. And next we are going to change the settings to certificate path validation settings. So once you have that open, define these policy settings and ensure that these first two boxes are left checked or enabled. And then at the bottom, we're going to leave this default option selected as well. Now under the Trusted Publishers tab, we're going to also enable this to find these policy settings. So we're going ahead and click on that box. and then we're going to select allow only all admins to manage trusted publishers. So go ahead and enable this second option in the middle. And then at the very bottom, we're going to click on verify that the publisher certificate is not revoked. All right, now for the next set of settings we're going to change is over in the network retrieval tab. And just like the other ones, we're going to set this to enabled. So click on define these policy settings. And we're going to leave all the default settings enabled as well. Now in the revocation tab, there's nothing that we need to change in here. We're not going to enable this one. So once you have all your settings in there, click on apply and then click on OK. And then we are going to change the settings in Certificate Services Client Auto Enrollment. So go ahead and open the properties to this one. Set this to enabled as well. Check these first two boxes and then click on apply and click on OK. Alright, so let's close our editor out. We can minimize and close our group policy management as well. And now we're going to install root certs on our domain controller. Alright, so I'm going to stay logged in here and I'm going to open up my install root. Now I already have my install root opened, but if you haven't opened it yet, make sure that when you do, you run it as an administrator. Otherwise, you won't be able to do or click on some of these settings like Active Directory NT-auth. Alright, so we've done that now to enable manipulation of the NT-auth. And now if we were to install certificates through install root, I would go ahead and select those green or these red X's right here and turn them into green checks for both my Microsoft local computer and NT-auth, and it would install all of these certificates, and that's under these tabs right here. So everything under install DoD certificates would be installed if I left that as a green check. But I'm not going to do it this way because at the time of this video and this lab, this install root has some of these certificates that are outdated. So we're going to do these in a manual way. But if I were to do them through this application, I would simply, like I said, click that red X, turn them into green checks. As you can see right here, all these already are installed because they install when you install root. So what I have right here is an MMC opened up, and I'm going to add my certificate snap-in. I'm still in my domain controller right now. I'm going to enable this from my computer account. And we're going to view where the certificates would be installed if I was using install root. Alright, so expand your certificates menu and then navigate to Trusted Root Certification Authorities and then certificates. Right, and you can see right here that I already have some of the DoD root certificates installed because, like I said, when you initially install the application install root, it also installs some of these certificates as well. All right, here are my intermediate certificates that also installed automatically. And here are my untrusted certificates as well. Now, because some of these certificates are already expired at the time of this video, I'm going to uninstall them. Let me minimize this. And before we get to that, I'm going to show you guys where is the secondary location that they would install the certificates. Alright, so I'm going to open up my PKI view in my sub CA. And I'm going to right click on Enterprise PKI and select Manage AD Containers. Alright, so right here in my NT-auth certificates container, you see that I only have my sub CA because I didn't select the option to install these under install root. right? So anti-auth right here, you can see that they all have red X's because I did not choose to install them using this application. But if I had, and if I had selected these, whether as individual files or the whole install DoD certificates or install ECA certificates, they would have populated. See, this is how I would do it. I would change that, click on install certificates, and they would populate under this tab in my sub-CA in PKI view. So now let's go ahead, now that we've covered where these certificates get installed during that process, let's go ahead and do this manually. So let's cancel this out and let's log back into our domain controller. Let's minimize this. And let me open Alright, so let's go ahead and delete these certificates that were pre-installed when we installed the certificate or the program. So let's highlight all of them except for our root CA certificate at the very top and delete. Click on yes. Then we'll do the same thing under our intermediate certification authorities certificates folder. I'm going to highlight all of these certificates minus our root CA and sub CA certificates. And I'm going to delete these as well. Alright, delete, click on yes. Alright, so now that we've deleted these and we've cleared these folders out, I'm going to import them manually. And I'm just going to import the ones that I need to be able to log in with my CAG. Now if I wanted to, in my untrusted certificates folder, I could delete these as well. But these aren't going to cause any issues for now, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave these in here. These also were installed by install root. Alright, so let's navigate to our certificates folder. And I'm going to ensure that I have my DoD certificates available to me first. So let me navigate to this shared drive. Alright, and in here I'm going to go to the certificates folder. Let me drag this to my desktop so that I can open it. And in this file, I have all these certificates that are currently valid. Let's go ahead and expand this, and then expand this menu on the right or on the left side. Expand the certificates, and I can view all the certificates that are valid. Alright, so I'm going to select the ones that I know that I need to be able to log in. That one for me is DoD ID CA59. I'm going to use as well. So let's start with this one, my email CA59. Alright, so it's opened up. Now let's click on the details tab. And let's click on copy to file. Click on next. Leave this as default DER. That's the type of file that we want. So .cer for certificate. Click on next. Then we're going to type the name and the location of where we want this file to be exported to. I'm just going to put this in the root of my C drive for now, and this is going to be my email 59 certificate. So let's click on next, and here you can see the location and the name and the file type. So that was successful. Now if I go to my C drive and my sub CA, we can see the certificate that I just exported as a single file. All right, so now let's go ahead and minimize my file explorer. And now I'm going to do the same process for my other two certificates. I need my DoD ID CA59 as well as my DoD root CA3. Now some of you guys have more than 3 certificates. Some of you have 5. You'll have 2 separate ones for ID and 2 separate ones for email, and on top of that your root. So just export any certificates that you need to be able to log in with your CAC for this lab. Now, if you were in a real live production environment, obviously you would import all of these certificates that are needed on your network for your users. All right, so now that I've exported all 3 certificates that I need, I'm going to create a new folder on my C drive, and I'm going to name this one DoD Certs. And I'm going to place my 3 certificates in this folder so that I can place this folder on my shared drive and I can make it accessible to any other virtual machine that I need it on. Let's go ahead and copy this folder, navigate to my personal shared drive, and paste them in there. Okay, so now that I've exported these as individual files, I'm going to create a GPO for DoD certificates. So let's navigate back into my domain controller. I'm going to copy this DoD search folder, or at least have it open and accessible. Now I think I'm going to copy it over to my C drive on my domain controller. Alright, so now we have it there locally. Let's import these into the stores that we discussed earlier on our domain controller. So let's import my root CA certificate first. Go ahead, click on next. Navigate to where you have your root CA certificate. For me, it's in that DoD search folder. Select your root CA. Click on open. And then click on next. Click on next. And then click on finish. Alright, so let this do its thing. It's going to take a second. Okay, so the import was successful. So let's go ahead and click on OK. You can see that your certificate is now in there. And now let's do the same thing for Intermediate Certification Authorities Certificates folder. And for this, we are going to import our DoD ID certificates and our DoD email certificates. Alright, so now that my certificates have been imported into my store, our next step is to import them into the NT-auth container in our sub-CA. So let's open up our Manage AD containers under PKI view. And in our NT all certificates container, I am going to import those files or those certificates as individual files. So let's navigate to my DoD search folder, and I'm going to import my email. Now it will take a second, so we'll wait it out. All right, and there it is. Now, when I did this lab walkthrough, for some reason, these certificates kept showing up as partial chain. Now, what I ended up having to do was after I completed this whole lab, right before I went and logged in, I came in here to verify and see if these were still with the status of partial chain. And when I noticed that they were, I simply removed them and re-added them to the NT-auth container, and then they were able to populate with a status of OK. So if you have to do that, or if they show up as a partial chain, let's go ahead and troubleshoot it. It could be that your certificate is invalid. Make sure that they are up to date. And you might have to just reinstall it. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can move on to the next step, which is to create the GPO for DoD certificates. Then navigate to the settings of it, and navigate to computer configuration, policies, Windows settings, security settings, and then public key policy node. And in here, we are going to right click on the Trusted Root Certification Authorities folder, and then we are going to import our DoD root certificates. So let's right click in here and click on import. Click on next and select your root CA3 or whatever root CA you are using for your environment. All right, now that import was successful, I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing for my intermediate certification authorities folder. And in here, I'm going to import my DoD ID certificates and my DoD email certificates. All right, so now that we have that GPO created, now we're going to create the OCSP, or excuse me, now we're going to install the DoD CRL auto cache tool on the sub CA. So let's go ahead and navigate to our sub CA. I'm gonna navigate to my share drive. or to the student share, and I'm going to copy the CRL AutoCache application or installer onto my desktop so that I can install it. Alright, so once it's done booting up, go ahead and then click on next on the install page. And we're just going to leave all the default settings for install, click on next, and complete the install. Alright, so install root finish or CRL AutoCache finished installing. It's opened up. Now let's go over what this tool is supposed to do. So if you navigate over to your sources tab and click on either of the two sources, you'll notice that in the locations portion where the sources is, you'll have a disa.mil website. Alright, so here I have my ECA and my DoD CRLs, and to the right, location, I see this DISA URL. Now what this application is supposed to be helping us do is reach out to these websites to download the current CRLs and then place them in the destination that we configure under the destinations location. Alright, so in here, typically what we would do is install the location of our virtual directory, which would be our certain role folder. Now, since in our environment we do not have a connection to the internet or to be able to reach this website, we would have to do this manually instead of using this application to configure it automatically. Alright, so if I were to do it through here, I would name my destination, right, 13mu, cert enroll, and then the location, I would put the location of my cert enroll folder or whatever you're using as your virtual directory. So I put C drive, Windows, System 32. All right, System 32, cert SRV, and then cert enroll. And then it would pull the CRLs from the sources location into my destination location, which would be the cert enroll folder right here. Now, like I said, this isn't going to work in my environment, so I'm gonna have to do this manually. So in order to do that, let's minimize or close out this CRL AutoCache tool. All right, close. I'm gonna open another File Explorer window. And I'm going to navigate to my share drive, student share. I'm gonna locate this folder, all CRL, right? You just simply locate wherever that folder is for you. And I'm going to copy all of these CRLs into this folder. Alright, looks like it's not liking the fact that I'm trying to do it from a network connection. So let's go ahead and skip this. Let's drag or copy this folder onto my desktop. Alright, that seems to work. Now let's drag that folder or open it up and copy its contents into my virtual directory folder. Alright, perfect, that worked. So now if I navigate into my virtual directory using a web GUI, I should be able to view all of these CRLs in that location. Alright, now some of you might be able to copy and paste it, however your environment is set up, right? Just make sure that you get all of your CRLs, or at the very least, the ones that you are going to need for the certificates that you configured. Alright, so now let's verify that. Let's open up a virtual directory, URL. I'm in my DC right now. Let's navigate to PKI, certain role, and there it is. I can view all of my CRLs that I just copied into that folder. Alright, so now let's log into our OCSP so I can create the OCSP revocation procedures. Okay, let's go ahead and open up our online responder management console. Alright, let's configure a revocation for our certificates. And before we do that, I want to make sure that my certificates are somewhere easily accessible. So let's navigate to my share. I'm going to copy this folder into my C drive. Alright, now let's head over to revocation configuration, right click on it, alright, revocation configuration, right click, add revocation configuration, click on next, and we're going to start off with our root CA. So let's go ahead and name this DOD underscore root underscore CA underscore 3. Click on next. Select import certificate from a file. Click on next. Browse and browse to the location of that certificate for your root CA. Select your root CA certificate. Click on open. Click on next. Select auto enroll for an OCSP signing certificate. Then click on browse and select your sub CA. And then an OCSP responding sign-in template should automatically populate in that box. So once you have that, go ahead and click on next. You'll get this error. Alright, this is pretty normal. It'll get resolved in the next step. So go ahead and click on provider. For base CRLs, click add. And in here we're going to add the URL for our CRL from our PKI website. So let's navigate to that location using our Internet Explorer browser. http://PKI usmc.mil/certain role. All right, and I'm going to locate the CRL for the certificate that I am configuring right now, which in this case is my root CA3. So I'm going to locate it, right, and I'm going to copy that URL that I see on the bottom left of Internet Explorer. You can type this out, right, if you like, or you can also right click on this blue hyperlink or whatever CRL you're going to use, right click on it, select copy shortcut, and then paste it into your add URL location box. All right, so it should look something like this. Once you have your URL in there, go ahead and click on OK. All right, and we're also going to change our interval at the bottom as well. So let's uncheck this refresh CRLs based on the validity periods. And we're going to put 1440, which equals a day, 1 day. All right, click on OK. All right, now click on finish. And then you should see a green check signifying a working revocation configuration. Now we're going to follow the exact same steps for our DoD ID and DoD email. The only difference for these two are going to be the name of the revocation configuration, the certificate that you will be using, right, because this one is going to be our email, and the URL that is going to match the same certificate that we are configuring. All right, so we've finished configuring our revocation configurations. Now let's move on to the next step, which is to modify the GPO from step 5 to reflect the OCSP path. All right, so let's close these out. All right, let's navigate to our domain controller group policy management console, and we're going to edit the DoD certificates GPO that we created earlier. So right click on it, click on edit, navigate to computer configuration, policies, Windows settings, security settings, public key policies, and then locate your trusted root certification authorities folder. And then we're going to right click on our root CA certificate. All right, let's see, root CA, right click on it. Head to the properties of your certificate, and then navigate to the OCSP tab, and we are going to add the URL of our OCSP. That should be the same URL that we've used in previous labs. http://xxmu ocsp.xxmu.usmc.mil/OCSP. All right, click on add URL, click on apply, click on OK, and then go ahead and repeat the same step for your intermediate certificates. All right, once you have that OCSP path configured, you can close your editor out. And the next thing we're going to do is add ActiveClient, ADMX, and ADML files to our central store and create a GPO. So now let's minimize this. And once again, I'm going to open up my file explorer. I'm going to navigate to that student share. Before I do that, I'm going to open up my policy definitions folder. Now you should already have a central store configured from the previous labs. If you don't, just go ahead and take the time to do that now. Create this policy definitions folder in this location, and then copy the original contents from the policy definitions folder in your Windows folder. Alright, so since I already had this configured, I'm gonna go ahead and transfer my ADMX files into this folder and my ADML files into this folder. Okay, so now let's navigate to where I have those files located. Alright, now I'm going to drag them over to my desktop to make it easier to copy them over. Let's open this up. Alright, highlight your ADMX files and drag them over into your policy definitions folder. Alright, perfect. Now let's open up our ENUS folder. Let's open this one up as well, and then copy our ADML files into this folder. Alright, perfect. So now we have our ADML and ADMX files exactly where we need them in our central store. So now let's open up our group policy management console again. And now let's create a new GPO at the root of our domain. And we are going to name this one ActiveClient 7.1. Now let's edit the settings of our GPO. Let's navigate to Computer Configuration, Policies, Administrative Templates, and we should now see this HID Global option. So if you don't see this option, it means that you didn't copy those files over correctly or into the right folder. You might have copied them into your local store instead of your central store, or maybe they didn't copy you over because of some permissions issue. So go ahead and make sure that they're in the correct folder if you're not seeing that. Alright, so once you see that, navigate into that folder and select ActiveClient. And then highlight the Smartcard node. Alright, now we are looking for Turn on U.S. Department of Defense configuration. Let's open up that setting and set this to enabled. Click on apply and click on OK. And then go ahead and close your editor out and your group policy management console as well. Now our next step is to add alternate UPN suffix. So let's head over to Server Manager, Tools, Active Directory Domains and Trust. Click on the properties or right click on Active Directory Domains and Trust and open up your properties. And then in this box under alternate UPN suffix, we are going to type mil, M-I-L. We will not add an @ symbol or a period in front of the mil. We're simply going to type M-I-L, mil. Click on add, click on apply, and click on OK. Then close this console out. And now let's open up our users and computers so we can create a user account and enable it for CAC Logon. All right, so let's head over to our users OU. Let's place our user in our systems folder. Right click in here, click on new, user, our last name is going to be set to Andrade, which is me. You can configure a previous user account to be able to log in with your CAC, or you can create a new one. I'm simply going to create a new one. Alright, so one mistake I did make in configuring this account is for this user logon name, I have to configure my EDI-PI. So let's go ahead and type that in instead of a username instead of a username configuration. Alright, and now additionally, I am going to add the PIV number associated with my CAC, which in this case will be 117274. Okay, so now that I have my account created, I'm going to update the group policy and test Smartcard Logon. So let's head over into my workstation. All right, let's go ahead and log on as my DA first. All right, open up a PowerShell console or a command line interface, and then do a GP update force. Let me close these out first. Now, once you've run your GP update, run a rsob.msc command. And we are going to verify that the setting turn on U.S. Department of Defense configuration is set to enabled. So let's navigate to computer configuration, administrative templates, HID global, ActiveClient, Smartcard, and you should see this turn on U.S. Department of Defense configuration setting set to enabled. GPO name, ActiveClient 7.1. So this is the correct GPO. This is the one we just configured in the previous steps. All right, so let's go ahead and close this out. Now that we verify that the setting is set to enabled. And now let's go ahead and attach our CAC reader. Once you've attached your CAC reader, attempt to log in using your CAC. Ensure you select your certificate. Now, one additional thing that I had to do that wasn't shown in this video is I had to run a GPU update on my domain controller, my subCA, and my OCSP as well. Now, the one on my OCSP I don't believe was necessary. I just did it as a safety measure. But the ones on my DC and my subCA were necessary. But there we have it. I am now able to log in with my CAC.